Hello and welcome to FS Brew. FS Brew is the region's first podcast focusing on all things insurance and InsurTech here in the UAE and the wider Middle East. I'm Vidya. I'm the founder of Forward, a startup that works with insurance companies to build their go-to-market digital propositions.
Hi, I'm Ranjit Philip. I work with startups and small companies on M&A, funding, and go-to-market support. So in today's episode, we have with us Sarbvir Singh, CEO of PolicyBazaar. He's had over 20 years of global experience in corporate leadership roles, venture capital, and public market investing. And he leads a very super talented team at PolicyBazaar.
Yeah, and it was superb chatting with him and getting insights about the Indian market and getting to know about PolicyBazaar's growth story. So it was all in all a very insightful conversation. We really hope you enjoy listening in.
Today, we are very pleased to have with us Sarbvir Singh, CEO of PolicyBazaar. Sarbvir, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ranjit and Vidya. Very happy to be on your show.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Very good. So we want to start with the customary question that we ask all insurance leaders. And especially it's important, you're coming from the investment banking, investment side of the market. What was your sort of decision-making process when you chose to agree to lead an InsurTech scale-up?
So I'll be very candid with you. It was not a very logical decision in any manner. Yashish, who's the founder of PolicyBazaar, is a very close friend of mine. We've known each other for 30 years. And it so happened that we met and he had this idea, and PolicyBazaar was at that time scaling up and they were planning a listing, etc. And I think Yashish and Alok felt that they needed more senior management to help build the business and take it forward. And he discussed it with me and I felt it was a good idea. And I trusted him. I would say the main thing was not necessarily anything to do with insurance. If you ask me again very candidly, it was more to do with the fact that I trusted Yashish. And I felt that if he's saying that it's a good opportunity, then I should consider it seriously. And when I thought about it, it seemed like a good thing to do. So yeah, that's the reason I came to insurance.
Perfect. And obviously, no regrets so far. You've been here. You're happy with it. I think that's the important thing is that the trust element with the founder is so important for when a professional CEO comes in, right? So to a startup.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's the most critical thing. See, if I were to also step back, see, in my life, actually, see, all of us have a certain pattern or rhythm that plays out in your life. So the rhythm that has always played out in my life is that I have never got a job through a headhunter or a professional firm or anything like that. All the time, whatever I have done, and 4, 5, 6 things now I've done in the last almost 30 years now, is all because of some friend on the other side.
Right.
And starting from my first job, even out of campus, I did not join a campus job in the sense that I got a job on campus, but I didn't join that because a friend of mine was working in Emerson in Hong Kong and he said, why don't you come to Hong Kong? And I said, wow, that sounds great. So let's go to Hong Kong. So every decision, and obviously right or wrong, has always been driven by another person at the other end of the line. And so hence, this was not very unusual. So while you only asked about why did I come into insurance, but why did I go into media? The answer was also the same.
Right.
I was with networking team for almost 10 years. And that was also because of a similar situation, not because I decided that media was a sunrise sector or anything like that.
Right.
That's been the rhythm in my life so far.
Very interesting.
Great. So the key is to have right friends. So you make the
absolutely. At least I would definitely say that. I think it's. I always say that it's the company you keep, and obviously, and you don't know. You can't. It's not very deterministic. You can't make friends hoping that one day they will be of use to you.
That's also there. Yeah,
it works out. Is the way I look at it. But it does help to have the right kind of friends. That I can promise.
Absolutely. And you mentioned PolicyBazaar. Obviously, it is an OG InsurTech that started off in India. It's no longer in the startup phase. It's obviously in the growth phase. It needed a different sort of structure. Can you dwell a little bit on that itself? What sort of organizational structure you brought in, the culture, the decision-making frameworks, incentives for the team? It'll be superb to know what are the changes you brought in.
I would say that I think PolicyBazaar always, and obviously all credit to Yashish for that, always had a very, even though, like you said, they were a startup, right? But even earlier, they always had a very mature view of the world, right? And I've known since they started in 2008. And even in 2010, I would argue that they didn't necessarily function like what you may consider a classical startup, right? So they had certain procedures, processes, and certain thinking. In my mind, it's about thinking rather than you use word like startup, growth phase. I would actually say that we are still a startup. It's not that we have become a very large company or something like that. I think we are still a startup from a thinking perspective. And when I say thinking, it means speed of execution, it means risk taking, it means being able to move without always over analyzing a situation. Right. So those are, I think, qualities that, in my opinion, are the positive qualities of a startup. Right. Now, then on top of that, of course, you need to have, as you grow, you do need a little bit more process. But I like to think of it that actually, as you grow, rather than trying to set rules, right, saying micromanagement, okay, do this, you can spend so much in, if you go to Bombay, or this ticket is allowed and that ticket is not allowed, actually to try to build a culture of accountability and trust, so that we can say, okay, these are the guidelines that in general, don't spend 50,000 rupees on a ticket to Bombay. I think that should come from the person's inner thinking. So what I'm trying to say is that rather than going in a micromanagement and rules-based structure, we want to go in a structure which is trust and guideline-based. Essentially, always do the right thing rather than worrying about what is the rule. Because I think rules create constraints, and when there are constraints, people will spend energy trying to overcome the constraint rather than following the spirit of the point. Now, of course, there are situations where this can't be implemented at scale or whatever, but largely that is the kind of organization PolicyBazaar was and is. So there's nothing that I have changed. I think I have just tried to sharpen the thinking and actually try to build on our strength. So the other principle that I always believe in is strength on strength. Rather than saying that, okay, this person or this team has this weakness, we would rather focus on the strength and say, okay, they're good at this, let them do more of this. And the weakness can always be covered by somebody else or something. I think that we always, point I'm trying to make is that I think that's what PolicyBazaar always did to some extent. And in the last, let's say, 4 odd years or whatever, we have further tried to go in the same direction, that give increasing responsibilities to internal people. So obviously there are some new people, there are some old people, but it's the same culture. And we're trying to give increasing responsibilities to our own people always. And maybe we'll talk of some examples, but give responsibilities to our people, create guidelines rather than regulation, and then trust people and hope that things will work out. And if they don't work out, then you take action rather than taking action upfront. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Yeah, I think the culture aspect and the mindset aspect that you brought out is so important, that you have to treat it like it's your own company and you have to be frugal in that sense. So that's how you
whatever is the right thing. Whatever I always say, whatever you would do with your own money. I said, I wouldn't fly like that with my own money, and I don't expect PolicyBazaar to do the same either.
And it's also, like you said, it's also building on the strengths, because many times when you have new leaders come in, they always tend to break what is already there and then create new things. But I think when you go into a stage of growth, which is a startup like PolicyBazaar, who was anyway doing well, you only build on the strengths and enhance it. Great.
Yes.
Absolutely. So that was the softer side of PolicyBazaar. Now let's get into a little bit of the harder side. The recent investor report, obviously, PB has achieved profitability in Q4 too. So congratulations on this achievement. So obviously, there's all this debate in the market that startups tend to just grow at the cost of profitability. Now you are a publicly listed company. So intriguing to know from a CEO's point of view, what levers have you turned to make the company move to profitability? How do you manage the trade-off between growth and profitability?
Sure. Obviously, that's a very natural question. See, first, I'd like to explain to you that it was not that we were a sort of loss-making company or a hugely loss-making company or something. Actually, unfortunately or fortunately, what happened was that there was a regulatory change in our structure. So without going into too much detail, we used to be a web aggregator till 2000. And then in June of 21, we became what is called a broker as per the regulation.
Okay.
Now, when that regulation changed, when we became that broker, we were allowed to do few things that we were not allowed to do under our previous license. And the two of those things were, one was we were not allowed to enter the corporate business. So we could enter the corporate business now that we were a broker. And the second thing was that we were not allowed to do what is called the agent aggregation business, what in India is called POSP. That business was not allowed for us as a web aggregator, but as a broker, we were allowed to do that. Okay. Now, in June 21, we entered these two businesses. In November 21, the company got listed. Now, unfortunately, because we were growing these two businesses and the listing happened at the same time, the perception, if you look at it from the outside, was that you were okay till the listing, and now after the listing, you suddenly have become wildly unprofitable. There was actually a third technical point, which I should also mention, that there was a charge for some employee stock options or something. Again, those stock options related to the past. They actually were not necessarily related to the future. But anyway, so from an outsider's perspective, because of these 3 points, suddenly you saw a sea of red ink on what was not that bad a situation prior to that.
Okay.
Now, this also coincided with the world's view changing on startups. So, in 21, startups were doing no wrong. They were the world's greatest thing and they should be valued till infinity, right? Now, suddenly in 22, 23, rates went up, the world changed. You know all the story. Then suddenly they said, oh my God, look at these people. They are just burning money. The growth is only coming at this cost. And so, that is the. Now, we were always clear in our mind that every year, if you look at our base business, every year, we have a contribution margin of somewhere in the 40s, right? Mid 40s or something. So for every rupee that we earn, about 40-45 paisa comes to cover the fixed cost. Our fixed costs were obviously growing slower than our revenue and contribution. So we knew that the lines eventually would cross, right? And they were headed in that direction. But because of these 2-3 external factors, it looked like they were not. Now, all we've done, if you see, for the last 3 years is done exactly what we were planning to do in any case. We have grown, the lines have started crossing. The investments that we had made, they have started tapering down a bit because now they are becoming scaled businesses. So now if you see the ESOP costs have, the way they were accounted for, that accounting has played out. So now you can see that the numbers are profitable. So again, long answer to your question, but point I'm trying to make is that we did not make any change. I'm sure there was some pressure, so we must have been more careful with our costs and all that. And there's no doubt about that. But largely, we did not make any change. We continue to focus on our key metrics, which is growth of fresh premium growth for us, which is the most important metric for us. So we continue to focus on that. But as the lines crossed, as these points went away, the profits have started to emerge. And I think that is the thing. If you see, Touchwood, we did not make any sort of restructurings or any changes from a people perspective or anything else. We just, like I said, kept doing what we should be, and has been kind. And 3 years later, we are looking better.
Right.
But largely, we did the same thing.
I think key takeaways for me was like the growth takes care of the problems automatically. There are some one-off charges in terms of ESOPs. And obviously, structurally, you become a brokerage. Obviously, there's a cost of capital, cost of compliance, but it opens a number of growth avenues. So it's a trade-off worth making.
Yeah. Just to give you a sense, I just want to share some context with you. 3 years ago, we were doing, and my numbers may be a little off, but we were doing 850 crores in a year of revenue. In Q4 of the quarter that we just reported, we did, I think, more than 800 whatever crores. So if you can think about it, in 3 years, we have grown 4x practically, right? So what we did in a year, we are doing in a quarter now. So the growth has been quite significant in our business. And as I said, the growth comes in a unit profitable way. So it's actually obviously helped cover the costs. So I think that's what our focus was.
Great. So keep the stress on unit economics. So one of the things that we love to discuss, and I think the world loves to discuss, is AI and Gen AI, and one can't really miss that topic anymore. And we noticed that PolicyBazaar has several initiatives in this space, especially around customer acquisition and preventing fraud. Can you give us some examples, some business examples of how you are using AI in your growth and profitability story?
Yeah, I think for us, I would say AI has been a story around 2 things. One is improving our sales productivity. So you'll notice the theme in all that I say, that our first focus always is on growth. So if we can improve our productivity of our leads, of people who are already coming to PolicyBazaar, then that is our first priority. And then, of course, cost efficiency and other areas follow. So I think what we have been doing in a very systematic manner, and one of the things that we always try to do is that we try to start with a business problem. Rather than saying that we should implement AI, we say, okay, what is our business problem and how do we find ways what technology can be used to solve that problem? So that helps to bind the tech team and the business team in a manner that the outcome is shared, rather than one team feeling that, look, I have done my development and that's good enough, and now you guys go out and figure out the rest, right? So we try to keep a shared outcome. And in that respect, I think you mentioned a few things and I can give you some examples on that. One is you said that we focused on risk. And that is a very important area for us because we believe that as a sustainable player, we have to make sure that the quality of business that we provide is very good and is something that our insurance partners can trust. They should never have to worry that our book has any kind of negative attributes. And one of the things there we do is that we run a risk model in our term insurance and life insurance business in general, where we look at a person. So we have all the variables in terms of how did that person come to us? Because one of the unique things about PolicyBazaar is that people come to PolicyBazaar to buy insurance versus we approaching them. So they come to us, hence we have a certain attribution in terms of which source, when did they come, how much time did they spend. So we get those variables. Then we have variables around what have they done with us in the past, right? Did they buy other products from us? What was their behavior in that area? Then we have a whole series of data points around what did they do when they visited us? What did they say when they spoke to us? What things did they click? What changes did they make? For instance, somebody changes their education from 12th pass to postgraduate, then that's a signal that, okay, we should think about that. Similarly, we look at that. And then we create a score. So we have an AI model which creates a score based on all the data points that we have. That score, if it's below a certain threshold, we consider as largely safe and we allow those bookings to go through the remaining, which are above a certain score, those we evaluate more carefully. And so we again believe with AI also that both AI and human beings are important. So we call it human in the loop. So AI throws up something, but then the person checks that so that we are not making any kind of error in terms of looking at the context. And then the booking, if it's checked, then it's checked. Then we give a score to our insurance partners and we say, okay, look, guys, this is what we have found. Now, when you do the underwriting, please check these things more carefully because this is our concern. Whatever. So hence, so the model works. So that's on the risk side. One very big area that we worked on is around efficiency, which is around do a lot of inspection of cars, right? For break-in policy. So if you need to buy a policy after your policy has expired, you need to do a video inspection. Now we have built a model which can look at that whole video. And again, the whole idea is that to try and sort out the thing. So instead of a human being having to look at 100% of everything, they only need to look at 5, 10, 15% because the remaining 85 is checked and sent onward. So that's another area where we built a whole sort of model and a whole system around it. Then we use it in our sales and service productivity. So for our advisors, whenever there's a call, within a few minutes, there is a summary which is generated. That what was discussed on the call, what happened, what were the key points, etc. What information have we captured about the customer? That is summarized so that whether that person or someone else speaks to that customer again, they know, okay, this is what the person's concern was. Let's say they were looking for maternity plans in health insurance. Advisor can be prepared and search in our data, in our learning management system or whatever, that, okay, what are the best, supposing he or she is not fully aware, they can learn about it. And then when they speak second time, they can explain it in a very cohesive and lucid manner. So again, these are just some examples, but in each case, what we have tried to do is to use technology to help our, I would say, humans of PolicyBazaar to do a better job. Right. And again, I could go on. Those are several examples that we have.
No, perfect.
Superb. And then for a country like India and the geography, and it's so spread out, you obviously need to find constant efficiencies to reach out to the customers.
Absolutely. It's an engagement. Insurance, since you all are from that field, you would appreciate insurance is a business of engagement. The customer is not super interested in insurance, right? It's a very dry subject. It's nobody's favorite thing. It's always something negative is going to happen. I think that anything that you can do which can engage the customer, make the customer feel that the conversation continues, right? Is that it's something that is going on as per what their interest is. That really helps. And that's our goal, to keep engaging the customer and maintaining their attention on the whole thing.
For sure. I think that totally makes sense. Now, switching a little bit on sort of your experience, we feel that sometimes having an investor mentality is great if you're an operator in a company. And did you feel that from your previous experience being exposed, you had a VC firm as well running, creating these strategic decisions regarding investments, capital allocation, and partnerships? Do you see any interesting cross-pollination that you brought to PolicyBazaar because of that background?
So I think I would say two things. One is that, look, we are all sort of children of our context, right? Whatever we have seen, learned, we obviously subconsciously and consciously, we apply those things. So definitely, as you correctly said, having spent almost 15 odd years in investment, I was definitely tuned to that. And I think that also helps you to look at the business from an outsider's perspective, right? That how does an external person look at it? What is the right way to address some of those points, etc. Having said that, I would also say that, strictly speaking, I think both good investors and people who run businesses at some level have similar thought processes, right? What does it mean? It basically means your ability to isolate the key variables. In my opinion, the common trait between both things is to isolate the key variables. See, because based at the job that I am doing, it's not about getting into each and everything, right? And trying to micromanage things or say what sales happened in the last 1 hour or half an hour or yesterday or today, right? Those are all things that I have a lot of talented colleagues who look at those things, right? So I think the job actually is to try and isolate things that you should engage with and leave a lot of things. It's what you say no to is as important as what you say yes to. And I think that trait is common in both areas. And I think that definitely translates. So I try my best not to over-engage with things so that all my colleagues have the freedom to execute, so that they should not feel that, like I always say, they should not feel that they're doing something for me or for PolicyBazaar. They are doing something for themselves. They have a certain objective, a certain goal, and they should feel that they are fulfilling that goal.
Right.
And while fulfilling that goal, the art is to try and make it add up and for as a company for us to do better every day and every month and every year. So I think the main thing is to isolate the key variables and focus on them, because you can't focus on too many things, right? I always say every year you can only focus on 2-3 things, and you need to keep driving those 3 things and communicating them and saying it over and over again, right? That's the other learning, that you have to say it over and over again. It might seem
you have to be almost repetitive.
Exactly, because if you keep changing the tune, right? If every day you wake up and you come up with a new idea and start changing the tune, then people get confused. They're like, what do you really want? And then they start tuning you out. See, the other thing you have to remember is that you have to remain relevant. I mean, PolicyBazaar is an organization. I have to tell you, it's not a terribly person-driven organization. Even before me, and certainly not with me, right? It's a bunch of people. We have probably 100, maybe 150 people in the company who think of themselves as owners, right? And who are, forget about what their equity ownership, etc. is, but who think from a very deep ownership mindset. And hence you have to make sure that you also command their respect. It can't be that if you start saying random things, then I don't think they would follow you. So that's why I think it's very important to be focused and isolate the key variables and then stay with those variables, right? To drive them out. And it takes time. I feel that certain things that, and one of the things that's what is a difference between what you said, between an investor mindset and if you're running a business, is that the time it takes to execute something is actually quite long. It takes time. You may think that it's going to happen tomorrow, but it doesn't happen, right? And it takes years sometimes to get there. But then when you get there, then it's a very pleasing thing, because now you know that it's very hard for somebody else to replicate it. Because it's not just about saying it. It's about the fact that even they will have to go through a 2-year journey to get there. Maybe they'll be a bit more efficient. They'll get there in 1.5 years. But it's going to take 1.5 years.
Absolutely.
Right? So that I think is the thing. And that's why I think it's in some ways it's more pleasing, because the changes that you see are more hard fought and more long lasting, hopefully.
Got it. Very good.
Awesome. We are very fascinated by the Indian market, the insurance market. It has one of the lowest insurance penetration in the world, but it is just superbly exciting. But also one of the dynamics of the market is it's not enough just being digital, right? If you have to reach the smaller towns and villages, you got to have a well-functioning POSP model. And you've mentioned that you have now access after the brokering license. Now, tell us, how's that panning out for you? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities with that distribution channel?
You're absolutely right, Vidya. There is no either or in India. I think if you were to take a 0-1 or black and white approach, I feel it just doesn't fly. I feel maybe even 30 years from now, there will still be a fairly vibrant physical land. And the reason I say that is that even if I look at very developed countries like the US or Korea or Taiwan or something, Australia, it's not like there is no physical channel, right? So I think human beings are at some level social people, and we need that touch and feel, especially for again, I would go back to the fact that the nature of the insurance product is fascinating, right? It's a promise. There's nothing more to it. You don't buy anything. You don't get a shiny phone or a money in your bank or anything like that. All you do is you get a PDF at the end of the whole thing, if you're lucky. So it's if you think about it, a very evolved product. No physical, tangible thing happens. There's just a promise, and then you hope that the promise will be maintained, right? Which is why people say that trust is the most important variable in insurance. I actually say that anxiety is the most dominant theme in insurance because everyone is anxious, right? The customer is always anxious. If they buy, they're anxious. If they don't buy, they're anxious. If there's a claim, they're anxious. If there's no claim, they're anxious, right?
Yeah.
And even the system at some level is anxious because there are so many balances that they're trying to maintain. Too many claims is a problem, too few claims is a problem. So it's a complex thing.
Yeah.
Now, in that context, like you said, having a physical distribution capability and ecosystem is very important. I think in PB Partners, our team has done phenomenally well. We have now sort of at a gross level, we have almost 2 lakh agents now. And these agents are getting access to a platform. They're getting access to products, variety of products from across all insurance companies. They're getting access to training. So one of the critical things that people forget is that knowledge and training is also a very important part of the equation. Because just having a product on a platform doesn't mean anything. Those products existed even before us. But that knowledge, that training, how to sell, what to do. So I think it's absolutely, the business is doing very well. We are slowly moving into I always say tier 4, tier 5 India, not just tier 2 and tier 3 India. And I think that's, people are responding. I think we have a unique advantage in that business because PolicyBazaar has a brand, right?
Yeah.
People are aware of PolicyBazaar as a brand. And I think that is definitely helping our partners as well. Our agent partners also benefit from that brand. And I think we are slowly but surely really moving into the entire Bharat, as they say, rather than just India.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole India versus Bharat debate, and if you need to be a sustainable, long-term, thriving company, you cannot ignore the Bharat part of it. Yeah, absolutely. Going now to the regulatory side of it, obviously IRDA is a very well-respected regulator, sometimes regarded as a model in many parts of the current world, especially in the GCC for sure. So new regulations have been passed, a few more are coming, things like expense of management, so on and so forth. Do you see interesting changes coming in the sector because of these new regulations? What's your sort of take on that?
I think, as you correctly said, I think IRDA in the last now almost 25 years, next year will be the 25th year, I think has presided over a very orderly and I would say efficient market, in the sense that sometimes in our micro sort of thinking, and Indians can be very critical, but the reality is that it's quite unique that you had a system up till 1999 and then a new system has come in and it's actually all played out largely in a very positive manner. So I think that is the overall context. I think in the last few years after Panda sir has become the chairman, one of the things that has changed is that he has brought a development mindset. So he's saying that it is regulation and development authority. So let's also focus on the development side of it. And what can we do to improve that? And I think that's obviously for any company which is trying to grow, I think that's a wonderful thought process and perspective to have. And I think that's, like you said, there have been very important changes. One is the whole EOM system where you look at total expenses of management. And why is that important? That is important because otherwise you start trading off variable costs and fixed costs, right? See, commission is only a variable cost. Now, in some channels, maybe you should pay more, but overall your cost may be lower, right? Whereas in other channels, while your variable cost may be lower, but your overall cost because of your fixed cost may be very high. So I think insurance companies should be allowed to balance. And I think that's a wonderful step that was taken. Similarly, I think the whole product, I think one of the areas which is very important that the authority did was that they freed up the whole product licensing regime, where they said that you can use first and then file, rather than filing and then using. So I think that is, and I think some of these regulatory changes take time to play out. I mean, many times people say, oh, nothing has changed and the growth rate is this or that. I'm saying, look, that's a very short-sighted view of the world. I think what happens is that, like for instance, the product changes. Now, it takes a few years because systems have to evolve, technology has to keep pace, marketing has to keep pace. So I think you will see in the next few years that acceleration that will happen because those changes were done in the past. So there's a lead and lag between changes. So yeah, absolutely. I think the regulator is very positive and I think they listen. I think the second thing that very much he has inculcated is a listening culture that look, give everyone a sort of a platform to talk and say things, and obviously they'll decide what is right, but at least everyone is heard. So I think that is also another very positive thing. And I feel absolutely that these changes will add up, and especially in the years ahead.
And all this should ideally move the penetration in the right direction.
Absolutely. I think it will. The middle, see, I'll tell you, what we've seen everywhere is that the middle class is the driver of insurance penetration. Because if you think about it, the very rich don't really need insurance. They have the assets to cover. The very poor cannot afford insurance. The government has to look after them, or society has to, look after them. It's the middle class which has to do it themselves. Like in India, we don't have social security, right? And we probably won't be able to afford it for a while till we move forward. So I think insurance is a wonderful solution. And you will find that as that middle class keeps growing, right, they will want to protect themselves. They will want to protect themselves against disease, against death, disability. And I think it will clearly start growing. You just have to be patient. I think India is a country where you have to be patient.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's not for the beginners. And because of the vibrancy of the country, we can, I think, expect a lot more innovation on the insurance side as well, with all these regulations being passed. So, just staying on the India story itself, we're seeing many exciting initiatives from various insurance companies from customer acquisition point of view. You've mentioned PolicyBazaar has always had a very strong acquisition, brand recognition, and a very strong customer acquisition strategy. Now, as a leader, how, beyond the traditional insurance metrics, what are the sort of metrics that you are measuring from your company's growth point of view? Are there any sort of customer success metrics or people metrics that you consistently measure? It'll be great if you could share with us.
You're absolutely right. See, financial metrics actually are lagging indicators of progress rather than leading indicators of progress. So obviously, financial metrics are very important, but I think you also need to have leading indicators. And what are the leading indicators? One, and I'll just say a few that we use rather than giving you some theoretical. One is customer satisfaction and customer experience, right? This this takes time to play out. So it takes today, just because your CSAT is A or B, doesn't mean that immediately next month your sales will go up or down. But over a period of time, if you consistently, so what we have seen is as our CSAT, and one of the sort of big initiatives that we've taken over the years is that we said that we've always been good at sales, right? We were always a good sales organization. We need to make sure that our customer experience is also at the same level as our sales capability. And one of the things that you will probably appreciate is that the Indian customer has changed, right? In the last 5, 10, 15 years. Suddenly we are used to a very high level of, like my favorite example is that when we were growing up, you could not return a product. In India, there was no concept of returning products, right? Now today people think nothing of ordering 5 pairs of shoes from some e-commerce website and keep 1 and return 4 and keep going. So the world has changed. We have services which work 24/7, they are free, everything happens. So I think you are in that world. Insurance has to, in my opinion, kicking and screaming, we have to take insurance into the 21st century and make sure that the customer's experience is the same. So customer experience is a huge focus for us, whether it's any small change to your policy to the point of claim. Claims is the most important area because that's what you bought the policy for. And at that time, if you can give a good experience, the person feels hugely relieved and happy about it. And if you give a bad experience, it just destroys that faith in the whole industry. So it doesn't matter, it's my fault, the hospital's fault, insurer's fault, it doesn't matter. The customer will feel cheated. So that is one area that we rigorously track in terms of customer satisfaction, and not just in numbers, but also in terms of anecdotes, in terms of seeing what people are saying about us, right? Social media. Today, there's a lot of tools that you can use. So I think that's one area. The second area, which I believe is equally important, is employee satisfaction, right? Finally, we are as good as our frontline employees. Right? Experience of a customer with PolicyBazaar has nothing to do with who the CEO of PolicyBazaar is, right? It has to do with who is the sales advisor, who is the customer experience advisor, how does he or she deal with them. So we try our best both to empower our team so that they have the information. Like I always say that information should be at the edges of the company, not guarded by the people at the top. It actually should flow, obviously, on a need-to-know basis, on a secure basis, etc. But it should be available with the last person so that when a customer engages with that person, they should be in a position to say, okay, this is what happened. Yes, this should be done. Here is the solution. Move on. Now, obviously, I'm giving a very idealistic view of the problem. We are not there yet, but we are moving in that direction. So employee satisfaction, employee empowerment, employee happiness is an equally big, I would say, indicator of where you're headed. So I think if your customers are happy, if your employees are happy, and of course for us, the third thing, which is, again, we are a triangle. See, you should always think of us as a triangle. Customers, employees, and insurance partners. all three have to be in balance, right?
Yeah.
And of course, the shareholder is in the middle, so we have to leave enough for the shareholder.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if these three are in balance, the shareholder will be happy. And for our insurance partners, our focus is to make sure that our relationship with them is positive. They find dealing with us as a joyful and positive experience. We give good quality business to them, good volume of business to them. So I think we look at that, we look at their perspective, how much are we doing for them, how happy they are with us. So I think these three things are more important indicators. And of course, the financial indicators, they always are there.
Sure. Perfect. Yeah, I think that good you brought out the insurance companies are your suppliers, and supplier KPI is also important, right? Not just the end customer. So now going from PolicyBazaar to your career. So obviously when we look at your CV or your LinkedIn, looks like you've been progressively rising. You're a CEO of a respected firm. Everything has been hunky-dory. One could assume, but we all know that careers have ups and downs. So just for our listeners to know that there is always a way to handle a down situation. If you could describe one such situation, how you handled it and what you learned from it.
First of all, I would definitely agree with you that God has been very kind and largely things have worked very well. And I always say that we are one part of the equation, but there is a bigger force, and I think the bigger force has definitely been very kind. So that said, yes, you're right. There are always situations in your career where, especially at that moment, you feel that things are terrible and there are various matters to be resolved. I don't want to necessarily go into any one particular situation because it brings too much light on that. I would say that my view always in situations when things are not going your way, right? And like you correctly said, there will be situations like that. There's nobody who can say that didn't happen to them, is to really just try to focus on the sort of here and now. My advice to everybody is to focus on today, right? Rather than yesterday and the future. Do what is required of you. Never think that anything that you've been asked to do is too small or too insignificant or whatever, because you don't know where it's going to land you, right? So just do what you're supposed to do. And I don't know the word, but there is a word I can look it up for you. But basically what it says is always keep moving. So I think in Hindu mythology, there is a word for this, which says that always keep moving. Right. And then everything will pass. So good times also, don't get too carried away. It's not you always, it's like a larger system. Right. In good times and in bad times, always keep moving. So keep doing something, keep doing what you're expected to do. And yes, when you're in that situation, this advice sounds a bit theoretical, but I found, at least for me, it's worked. That irrespective of the situation that I've been in, I just keep trying to keep moving. Right. And hopefully it'll pass, and it largely tends to pass. And I always remind myself in both in good and bad times, because even in good times, it's very important to remember.
Stay grounded.
Yeah, awesome. Perfect. Not to have an uneven keel, fly too high when you're successful and go too deep when you're unsuccessful. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's, and like I said, do whatever is your job, whatever you're supposed to do it with full effort, even if you feel the world is against you. Because see, what happens is, like what you're saying, when you're in a funk, essentially what happens is that you feel the world is against you and you're not getting, outcomes are not coming based on your effort. So unfortunately, at that time, you switch off the effort also. Then it just becomes worse, right? So the idea is to just keep doing, and like I said, at least that's how it's worked for me.
Yeah.
Awesome. And coming back to PolicyBazaar, if you have to do a little bit of crystal ball gazing for the organization and look at it from next 5 to 10 years time from now, what do you think it would look like for PolicyBazaar? Is it more around product innovation or getting more deeper into the customer segments in India, or maybe more international expansion apart from UAE that you're currently based? Is there any insights you can give us?
So I think first I'd say that India is a huge opportunity for us. So I think we are lucky that we started in a way, we chose the right market, or the market chose us, and I think it's a good time to be in India. The middle class is growing, digital is growing, insurance is growing. So I think we are on the sort of many of the big trends, we are in our favor. So I think our job number one has to be to take advantage of these trends and make sure that we do a good job, right? It would be foolish to throw away what we have for something which may or may not happen. So I think that's one. Now, within that, I feel that one of the key things for PolicyBazaar, if you ask me, is that, and this is our sort of internal thinking also, that we want to go from transactions to trust. So today we do a lot of transactions, right? And whatever, 4 crore people have 4 crore policies we have sold and all those kind of numbers. But I'm saying the most important thing is that how many customers can start trusting PolicyBazaar, that they can feel that, yes, we are on their side. We will make sure that if they bought a policy from us, they will, and if they have been honest in terms of their declarations and disclosures, we will ensure that they get what is expected as per the policy terms and conditions and the sort of thing. So I think that, to my mind, that sort of captures the key things that we have to do, which is that we have to move to a relationship of trust with our customers, for which we have to ensure. Now, what does that mean when you take it to the second level? It means that we have to make sure that the people who come, we have to keep talking about why insurance, why you should buy health insurance, term insurance, right? That's a very important thing we have to do. Then we have to make sure that when they come, that they see products that are good for customers, so that there are no gotchas, there are no hidden things in those products and not explained properly or whatever. So we want to make sure that we have good products at good prices.
Yeah.
Then we want to make sure that once they bought the product, they're treated right. Then when they go for a claim, they're again helped. Same thing in life insurance. In term, what you do, then in savings, make sure that we have the right product. So I think that's the journey we are on. And we'll have to do many things in that journey to get to that. It's a hard thing to do. But I think if we can move in that direction, then we'll definitely move. And along the way, I think there'll be many changes that will come. Maybe some regulations will change. Maybe we will be allowed to take risk on our books, like a MGA or something like that will be allowed. Those will all play into what I'm trying to tell you, which is that our customers should really trust PolicyBazaar and feel that, yes, this is the channel where if I buy from them, I don't have to worry about it.
Mhm.
That's what we would like to achieve. And I think we are moving in that direction.
Perfect. So from transactions to trust, that could be the title of this podcast. That's very good, Sarbvir.
I think we do have a hashtag running. It's called
Oh.
Up Side Hair or something, correct?
Okay. A few years ago, we had.
Very nice.
Nice.
So that kind of brings us to the closing part of the main section of the podcast. Now, this is the exciting sort of rapid fire questions. If you're ready, sir, we'll throw a few at you and we'll see what happens. So the answers have to be in 60 seconds or less. That's the whole guideline, but that's it. So I'll start with you and then you take up the rest. There we go.
For it, Ranjan.
Okay. So Sarbvir, what has been the biggest lesson that you've learned in your career?
Stay grounded. I think the biggest lesson is no job is too big or small. Stay grounded.
Stay grounded.
Head down, chop wood. I think that's what I always say.
Perfect. What would be the one word to describe your leadership style?
I think collaborative.
Think collaboratively. Very good. What would you say is your favorite city for travel or business?
I really like going to Gulmarg.
Gulmarg.
That's
Oh.
my favorite
Oh,
city.
wow.
I like to ski, and that's my favorite city.
All right. Okay. Nobody has said Gulmarg ever, so that's kudos to you for that.
Maybe I hadn't thought about it enough. I think you asked and I answered.
Excellent. So, what book, blog, or podcast, a documentary do you find yourself recommending the most?
I read this book some time back. It's called The Courage to be Disliked. I don't know the author's name. It's a Japanese author.
Okay.
And I have found that book to be amazing. And it's really influenced me. And I think it's changed my life for the positive. So I always recommend people to read it.
Wow. Okay. I need to look that up. Perfect. Over to you, Vidya.
Awesome. What's the most exciting tech innovation in insurance?
I think it's the whole, I would say it's in the area of whole data science. The fact that in a business which was very quantitative, I think we are finally applying data science and finding patterns and using them to distinguish risk. So I think I would say that is the biggest, and of course AI and etc. is part of that.
Nice. Awesome. And who's like this most business leader or entrepreneur that you feel inspired by?
I think Elon Musk.
Lots of them do say that, yeah. And you prefer to work from home, work from office?
Work from office.
Office, always. Okay. What's like the top priority for PolicyBazaar in 2024?
I think it's to build our team. If you were to ask me one thing, is to keep developing our team and have more and more people with ownership mindset. I think that's the most important thing for us.
Great. And what's like the biggest risk you have ever taken?
I used to live in the US. I had a green card. I had a good job, and I was offered a very good job. But I decided to come back to India, to the horror, much to my wife's horror. And so I would say in hindsight, maybe that was a big risk. I don't know if it was a risk or not, but yeah. At that time, it definitely seemed like a risk.
Excellent. And definitely it has turned out to be all right. So excellent.
So that sort of brings us to the end of the podcast. We thoroughly enjoyed chatting with you. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us all the insights that you have shared with us. Thank you.
Thank you. I also had a good time. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarbvir.
Thank you.